The marketplace on Zenith Station buzzed with the chaotic energy of 1,000 species conducting business under the artificial sun. Ayla moved through the crowd with practiced ease, her dark eyes scanning the exotic wares displayed on hovering platforms. At 17 standard years, she'd spent most of her life on these orbital stations. The daughter of diplomacy and compromise, stay close. Her security detail murmured through the comm-beat in her ear. She rolled her eyes. Being Vice President Korish's daughter meant constant supervision, constant protection, constant reminders that she wasn't just Ayla, she was a political asset. That's when she saw him. The human boy couldn't have been more than 18. His clothes worn and patched, standing before a Krillian merchant twice his size. The four-armed alien loomed over him, chitinous plates gleaming, mandibles clicking in agitation. "You think you can cheat me, human?" The Krillian hissed, one claw reaching for the boy's throat. Ellis had dealt with worse. 3 months scraping by on Zenith Station had taught him that the galaxy didn't care about Earth, didn't care about the colony ships that had scattered humanity like seeds to the cosmic wind. He'd learned to hustle, to trade, to survive in the cracks between species that had been traveling the stars, while his ancestors were still banging rocks together. "I didn't cheat you," Ellis said, holding his ground despite every instinct screaming at him to run. "The energy cell was defective when I bought it. That's not on me." The Krillian's other 3 arms flexed, weapons materializing in its grip. The crowd began to part, creating that familiar circle of spectators who wouldn't intervene. Standard procedure let the lesser species sort out their own problems. Ayla's breath caught. She'd seen this before. Humans had no real standing in the Galactic Council, no protection, no rights beyond what individual stations chose to grant them. They were newcomers, primitives who'd barely mastered faster-than-light travel before stumbling into a galaxy already carved up by ancient civilizations. Her father had explained it coldly. "Logically, the Council operates on millennia of precedent, my dear. Humanity hasn't earned a seat at the table. Perhaps in another 1,000 years." But watching the Krillian raise a plasma cutter toward the boy's face, precedent seemed like a distant, useless thing. The security team was already moving, but they were focused on protecting her, not some random human street vendor. The Krillian's weapon began to glow. Ellis saw it coming. He'd known this day would arrive, the day when being human, being weak, being unprotected would finally cost him everything. He thought of Earth, a world he'd never seen, just stories from his parents. He thought of how they'd promised him the stars would be beautiful. They hadn't mentioned how cold they were. "Get down." The shout came from everywhere and nowhere. Ellis's combat instincts honed from fighting for scraps in the lower decks took over. He dropped into a crouch just as something massive sailed over his head. Ayla had lunged. Her security team shouted in panic as the vice president's daughter crashed into the Krillian merchant with the full force of her enhanced physiology. Korish's species was dense, heavy world dwellers with strength that could bend steel. His daughter had inherited that strength. The Krillian stumbled backward, weapons clattering across the marketplace floor. The crowd gasped not at the violence, but at who had initiated it. "You will not harm him," Ayla said, her voice carrying the harmonic resonance of her father's people. She stood between Ellis and the merchant, her slight frame somehow seeming enormous in that moment. The Krillian regained its footing, mandibles spreading in a threat display. "This is not your concern, daughter of Korish. This is a commercial dispute with a human. They have no rights." Ayla interrupted. "No protection, no value?" Her hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. "I've heard it all my life. Every species you deem lesser, every population you consider too young for representation." Ellis stared at her, still crouched on the ground, trying to process what was happening. He'd expected death or pain or arrest. He hadn't expected salvation, especially not from a girl who looked like she'd stepped out of the council chambers. "Your father will hear of this," the Krillian threatened. "Good," Ayla said. "Tell him his daughter is tired of watching the council's justice in action." Security had surrounded them now, weapons drawn, but uncertain. Their mandate was to protect Ayla, but from what? She was the aggressor here. The lead guard touched his comm. "Sir, we have a situation across the station, in the crystalline spires of the council chambers." Vice President Korish felt his blood chill at the report. His daughter, His careful, intelligent, diplomatic daughter had just assaulted a merchant to protect a human. The political implications were staggering. Ellis finally found his voice. "Why?" he asked Ayla. "You don't know me. I'm nobody." She turned to look at him, and he saw something in her eyes that he'd stopped believing existed in the galaxy. Genuine compassion. "My father says humans aren't ready for the council," Ayla said quietly. "That you're too young, too primitive, too human." She extended a hand to help him up. "But I've been watching your species since you arrived. You survive in places that would kill others. You adapt. You hope when hope is illogical. You show mercy when you've been shown none." Ellis took her hand, her grip surprisingly strong as she pulled him to his feet. "Maybe," Ayla continued, loud enough for the crowd to hear, "the problem isn't that humanity isn't ready for the council. Maybe the problem is the council isn't ready for humanity." The words rippled through the marketplace like a shockwave. Species that had never given humans a second thought now looked at Ellis, bruised, defiant, and standing beside the vice president's daughter with something approaching curiosity. In his chambers, Koresh closed his eyes. His daughter had just committed political suicide over a species with no power, no influence, no future, or perhaps, he thought with the faintest hint of pride, she'd just changed that future entirely.